All right, guys, welcome to the Buff Show. We got Big P in the house with us today.
I'm ready to rock and roll, baby.
Are you? This will be a good one because I feel like a lot of times I get calls like, Peyton, my neighbor's house just sold for $1 million. Mine's got to be worth $1 million too. So we're going to dive into how appraisers look at sales, what things they take into consideration, and how to compare properties so you're comparing apples to apples and not an apple to a banana, which
Right.
I feel like a lot of people do, looking at their neighbor's house and their house when in reality, totally different. So
Totally different.
yeah, take us off here.
Okay, sweet. So starting off with number one, so location.
Location.
Yes, that is a big one. And I think this plays a bigger role than people think.
Yeah.
Just because like you could have the same cookie cutter house in Bear Lake.
Right.
And then you could have the same one in downtown Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And I guess Bear Lake, like let's say Tremont.
Yeah.
Tremont and then Salt Lake City.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
Totally different markets.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different. So that's huge.
Yeah. So I think the first thing appraisers look at is like, is it in the same general location or neighborhood? And even when I compare stuff in, let's say Ogden, for example, a house in downtown Ogden versus a house up on the East Bench by the trails, like you'll see a huge swing in values just in that. It's like anytime you go closer up on the bench, you'll see values change and they're different. And so when I'm comping out properties, I try and stay within, depending on the area, but if it's a cookie cutter, very similar styled home, I'm trying to stay within, half a mile to a mile, quarter mile, depending on how many cells I can find. Sometimes, like I just did one in North Ogden, and there was like a house 2 doors down, another one just a few blocks up, and I'm like, perfect. This is super easy. But if you're comparing a property in Morgan where there's just not as many cells, like it gets harder, and you got to expand it, open it up. Sometimes you get like, let's say it's a property on 25 acres in Huntsville. Like, then you'll be looking in all of Ogden Valley, all of Morgan County. You're going to start opening it up and look in other areas just to compare in other markets, So, or a lakefront home in Huntsville, right?
Right.
So just things to consider. All right, what's number two?
Number two is the style. So this could be anything from like if it's a Rambler ranch house style.
Yeah.
Especially like townhomes, condos. And I think that's one that like I've run into too, is like the difference between a townhouse and a condo.
Right. Yeah.
Two totally different, although they seem similar, they are different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, appraisers like to use similar properties. So they don't want, again, it's like apple to apple. Like you want to compare a Rambler to a Rambler or a 2-story with a 2-story. And there's reasons for this. I'm going to ask you a question. You might not know the answer, but what do you think costs more to build, a Rambler or a 2-story?
I'd say probably a Rambler.
So it's actually a 2-story.
Okay.
The reason being, because if you think of a 2-story, 2 stories, most of the time, they don't have a basement.
Right.
And most of the finished square footage is above ground, right?
Right.
So it's 2 stories. It's going up. Some of them will have finished basements, but if you think about a Rambler, a lot of it is a main level with a basement. And so if you think about what the cost is to build a 2-story, Ramblers, you don't have any exterior finishing costs on the foundation because it's buried in the ground.
Right.
There's no siding. It's a lot easier to finish versus a 2-story. You're finishing the inside and the outside of 2 levels because it's going up. And so 2 stories generally cost more to build just because there's more finished product exposed, if that makes sense.
No, that makes way more sense.
So yeah, some things that a lot of people don't consider. And then same with like a few other styles would be like, there's bungalow, cottage bungalow. Those are just like smaller footprint, similar to Rambler. I always struggle with like, is it a Rambler or a bungalow? Like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And that's like, it's hard because there isn't like a clear definition.
Right.
Like you could Google it, but like there's nothing out there that's like under these guidelines. This is what, separates a bungalow from a Rambler or a 2-story or.
Yeah. And then you got multi-level, like, is there 3 or 4 floors? You have the split entry where you walk in and there's stairs going up and down.
Yeah.
So, just when you're comparing, and when your neighbor's house that sold, maybe theirs was a 2-story and yours is a split level. Like, they're just different products. And so things to consider.
Yeah. And with that being said, like, is one style of house going to have more value? Like, is a Rambler going to be more valuable than let's say, like a split level?
I would say yes. Reason being, generally, Ramblers have less stairs. A lot of them will have like single level living. They just appeal to more people. I would say the layout's more widely accepted and just easier for people to live in versus a split level.
Okay.
Because you're not going to get very many older couples or retirees that are like, hey, find me a split level, right?
Right.
But you'll get newlyweds, young families, retirees, all sorts of people that want Ramblers, right?
Right.
Rambler's probably your most common style home. Then it's like a 2-story, and then you have multi-level and split entries. But you don't see very many split level entry homes like that are new builds today.
I don't think I've ever really seen one.
It was a cool thing in the 60s.
Yeah.
And now people are like, it's just hard. Like, somebody comes to your door and you're going upstairs, it's a different style.
Do the awkward sidestep. Oh, let me walk down 2 of the stairs to the basements to get around you.
Right. Or getting groceries in and out of your house. So I would say the most like common ones are Ramblers and 2-stories. Those are very like easy properties to live in. And then, but there are a lot of other, buy or try multi-level homes, 2-story or split entries, things like that. So number 3, what's that?
Number 3, so size. So this is just all about the square footage.
So when I'm comping a property, I'm always trying to get plus or minus a couple hundred square feet. So say it's a 2,000 square foot home, I'll go maybe up to 500 square feet plus or minus. And ideally, I'm only a couple hundred square feet off. Because if you have a house that's 100 square feet bigger or smaller, times that by $200 a square foot, we'll just say that's what properties are going for. That additional 100 square feet is like 20 grand in price difference. So sometimes people are like, hey, my neighbor's house sold for $1 million and it was 5,000 square feet. But my house is only 3,500 square feet and there's a 1,500 square foot difference there. Like, that might not seem like a big difference, but that's huge when it comes to the value. So even at that $200 a square foot, you're 15 times 20. What's that?
Putting me on the spot.
I don't know, but it's a lot of money. We'll just say it's 10 times, right? 1,000 square feet. So for every 100 square feet difference, you're 20 grand. So that would be that's 200 grand, right? I don't have my phone, but
do you want me to pull it out?
Yeah, do 1,000 square feet times 200. Pretty sure it's 200 grand.
I think it is
$200,000. So a house that is 1,000 square feet more equates to roughly $200,000 on the price per square foot. So size makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's insane.
So, people don't think about it that much,
right?
Though. They're like, it sold for $1 million, and you're like, well, yeah, but it was way bigger.
Way bigger.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel that way because, like, you could walk through a home that's like 2,500 square feet to like 3,500, and like you'll notice maybe a little bit of a difference, but it's not that much bigger.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to
the numbers,
it
actually is.
It's huge.
Yeah. Okay, number 4.
All right. So the year built. So I think this is an important one.
Yeah.
Just because like we have a lot of new builds going on, but then we also, in some parts of Ogden, we've got some that are over 100 years old.
Right.
So I think trying to compare those is...
Yeah, you can't do it really.
You can't do it.
Yeah. Appraisers like to be like pretty close on the year built. So I always go plus or minus 10 years. So if it was built in 1980, I'll go up to 1990 down to like 1970 and just try and find homes that are built within that same decade plus or minus, And yeah, if you go a whole lot different, there's totally different products, styles, things used. Sometimes if it's like a 1980s home that's been completely stripped down to the studs, replumbed, re-electrical, new windows, new everything. And I'll be like, okay, this is basically a brand new house. Let's comp it accordingly, and then you'll change or adjust it there. But most of the time, you're wanting to be within plus or minus 10 years.
Yeah. So I question on that. So you're saying like let's say, for example, that 1980 home, completely stripped, redone. Would you be comparing that to brand new, like 2024 builds that we're in right now?
Okay. Yeah. If it's in those areas, yeah. Or similar properties that have been updated, like Bountiful is kind of notorious for that. Like some of these older homes on these awesome lots, like people will just go in and completely, totally rehab the whole thing, new everything. And then you would basically, that would be comped out different.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. Okay. Number 5. What do we got?
Number 5. So the date it was sold.
Yeah. The market's constantly changing, and it's being erased by the newest listings that are being sold. So even if your neighbor's house sold for an amazing price a year and a half ago, appraiser's not going to use that,
Right.
Or even a year ago. Like they want data that's like recent. So you can see neighborhoods rise and fall with just the most recent sales, and it changes. It can change a lot. I'll see quite frequently where you'll have just like a community, a neighborhood of pretty similar homes, and you'll get one outlier, and that kind of sets a new benchmark. And then everybody's like, oh, dang, like my house is basically the same as that.
Right.
And then that's the new comp. Or if it comes down, it's like, well, hey, this just sold. So like, why am I going to pay that when this just sold? So
right.
The date that it's sold is super important. And the closer you can get, within the past, month or two is the best. If you have to go further out than that, it happens. There are times where you're in super unique areas where I will look at stuff that's 1 to 2 years out just to get an idea, like what's sold here, Huntsville town on the lake. Like there's only a handful of cells that sell every, 5 to 10 years in there. And it's good to know what those are going for. And then you can kind of take that price and be like, okay, well, what's the market in the valley done over those past 5 to 10 years? And you can kind of gauge it that way to get an idea. But some properties are just super hard to pinpoint a value,
Yeah.
And then others, it's like, okay, this is easy. There's tons of data here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think leading into like this next one. So number 6, features, like if it has unique features.
Yeah.
Like that's where I think it gets hard.
Yeah.
At least like when I'm like pulling comps myself, like, oh crap, it's got a swimming pool.
Right.
Like now I got to try and find one that has a swimming pool to try to compare it.
Yeah.
Like how do you like incorporate that? Like when you're like, do you really consider that?
I start with like the main facts of the home: size, style, location, year built, date sold, and then I'll go into features. But yeah, so unique features: swimming pool, solar, detached shop. Those are all things that you need to be aware of. And they do affect the value, but probably not as much as you might think. And a lot of like the solar reps are like, dude, get solar because you're just going to get it. Like it's going to increase your property value. If you pay 50 grand on solar for a solar system, it's unlikely. Well, I know that an appraiser is not going to give you $50,000 worth of value on the solar. It might be 5 to 15 grand, but it's never a dollar per dollar cost thing.
Right.
So you do get some bonuses in the value from the appraiser by having, a detached shop or things like that. But most of the time it's pretty laughable at what they give you. So
yeah.
For example, we have a listing right now, and they have a detached garage with like probably, I'm going to say 500 square feet of additional living space up there.
Oh, wow.
It's finished, it's heated, it's cooled, but it's in a detached shop, not connected to the house. So I called an appraiser. I'm like, hey, can we like incorporate this into our like gross living area square footage? And he's like, no. I'm like, why not? He's
Really?
like, because it's not connected to the house. He's like, so that's like accessory square footage. Like, it's there, but it's not attached. You have to go outside to get to it. And I'm like, okay, well, what's that valued at? And he's like, it's hard to pinpoint, but probably a quarter of what the square footage. So if things are going for $200 a square foot, he would give it $50 a square foot roughly.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah. So just some things to think about.
Well, that's like a question on that. Like, just as like we were talking about, I was thinking like for like a swimming pool or like solar, like I don't imagine every single appraiser out there is going to be an expert on, looking at a pool and be like, oh yeah, that was definitely like $50,000 to put in.
Yeah.
Oh, the seller was $50,000. Like that's what I'm going to give it.
Right.
Like I guess they're more experts on the house, not on like.
Well, and they have
extras.
They have, I'm sure, and I would love to have an appraiser on because they will have their like, hey, a shop in general adds this much value. So they kind of have their numbers. I don't know what those are exactly. I do know that a swimming pool can be a pro or con for some buyers. Like it can be an attractant or a deterrent for people. And so I think appraisers are not going to be like, hey, this for sure adds value. Like things that for sure add value is like the condition, the year built, the size. Size is a huge one. Like the more square footage you have, the value is going to go up. And then the seventh one that I just wrote down is your lot size. Are you on a 1/4 acre or 5 acres? Like it's a big difference. And so, but they are going to want to compare properties that are similar in lot size, parcel size. And so that's the last one that I threw in there is how big is the lot that you're on. So wrapping up as we take into consideration these 7 items, these are the things that you need to be aware of when selling your house and things that you need to be looking at when it comes to pricing your house versus just being like, well, my neighbor sold for this.
Right.
It's like, well, your neighbor just got to compare apples to apples. Maybe your neighbor's house is identical to yours and very similar. Maybe your house is worth more. Like you just don't know until you really get into the details and compare it, and then you have a really good idea. Right. So, for example, on this one in North Ogden, we were able to take, I think I had 8 solds in there, and I was able to say, hey, out of these 8 solds in your neighborhood, they're all really similar on year built, size, lot size, and features, and they're the same style. They're all Ranch Ramblers. They sold on average for $180 a square foot, comping you out on an average sales price of $475 is what I think it was. So like I was able to really get them concise data based on the past, 8 sales in the neighborhood. And then you really have something to talk about and compare. And then we can get out the fine tooth comb and be like, okay, how many bedrooms did this one have? How many bedrooms did this one have? What was the condition like? A condition's another one that I think we could add in here, but it would probably fall under features. Like, what's the condition like? Is it recently updated? Are the bathrooms updated? Kitchen, plumbing, all of that stuff?
Yeah.
Or is it outdated? So anyways, lots of stuff that I think a lot of people just aren't aware of or don't really think about when it comes to pricing a house. But hopefully this episode is helpful and helps people when it comes to valuing things. So anything you want to throw in there?
No, I think, I guess one thing to say is like, you can do a lot of your own research, like as a buyer or a seller.
Yeah.
But I mean, just hire a professional.
Yeah.
Just talk to somebody who's done it.
Utah's non-disclosure. So all the sales records aren't public. So only appraisers and real estate agents in Utah have access to the sales data. So it's really hard to know because it's not publicly posted.
Right.
Whereas other states it is. So you really do need to hire somebody and be like, hey, and we'll come do it for free. Like we'll come give you an independent analysis and give you what's called a CMA report. It's not anything that like an appraiser is going to have a more detailed report and you'll pay for it, but we can get pretty dang close with our CMA report. So,
right.
Anyways, yeah, hopefully that was helpful. If you guys have a property that you're wondering what the value is, reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you out. Till next time.